Hi guys, so this is going to be part 3 of my hospital journey. If you haven't seen the other parts, go and check them out. I will link them below. In part 1 I talked about exactly what happened and how this all started and my admission to hospital with septicemia. Then in the second part I just talked about how I got a stomach infection, the peritonitis, and the emergency surgery that I had to have, and the drainage tube, and all that fun stuff. So go and watch those. So now I had kind of been in and out of hospital. That was my third admission, and I was allowed to go home. But before I went home, I remember telling them I'm having trouble going to the toilet, and to the point that I was kind of in pain. Like I felt like I really needed to go, but I couldn't. And I felt like I really needed to go, but I couldn't, and I was spending a lot of time on the toilet trying to go, and I told them that, and they were kind of like, oh yeah, that's normal, that's just, you know, you've had surgery and you've had a lot going on, your bowels just need a little bit of time. So they gave me a whole lot of laxatives, and they sent me down to the discharge lounge to wait, just while they did all my paperwork. And I remember when I was in the discharge lounge, trying to go to the toilet, like I spent the whole time in the toilet, and I was still in pain from this like surgery that I'd had and this tube that I'd had in, and I remember sitting there thinking, this isn't right. Like, this is not just constipation. Like, why can't I go to the toilet? And I mentioned it to a nurse in the discharge lounge, and she kind of said the same thing. She just said, your body's been through so much. Just give it time. I was like, yeah, but it's uncomfortable. Like, I feel like it's right there. I need to go, and I can't. Anyway, I went home. They would just point it down to my body needed a little bit of time to heal. So I went home, and I spent about a week in this agony again. Like no temperatures, nothing like that. I was feeling fine. We're finally on top of this infection. It was great. I'd had a few blood tests a few days after coming out of hospital. Infection was good. Everything was fine. No fevers. That was good. That back pain, everything. The operation had done what it needed to do, and I was good again. I was still on antibiotics though, because it was such a strong infection. But yeah. So I spent a week on the toilet. I would take the laptop in with me. I couldn't walk without this weird abdominal pain, a whole different abdominal pain. I couldn't walk around. If I sat, I felt like I just so badly needed to go. I was getting bloated and bloated and bloated. I'll try and insert some pictures if I'm able to. But I was just getting so bloated, and I hadn't gone. And then I developed, probably about day 4 or 5, like into that week, I developed horrendous like spasms, and I would sit on the toilet and I would just feel the spasm come through my stomach, and I would sit there like gripping like the toilet seat and just cry until it let go again. But all this time I still didn't go to the toilet. These spasms were happening every like half an hour. I was in agony. I just could not go to the toilet. Spending hours on the toilet trying to go. So I went to the doctors, and they said, I think I went to the doctors finally about, probably not even a week actually, and they said, well, we'll send you for some blood tests and we'll make sure everything's good, but here's some laxatives. And I was like, you don't understand. This isn't just constipation. This is agony. Like, I couldn't sit because I felt like, I know, like it was right there or something. If I sat, I was in pain. Walking around, I was in pain. I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't eat. If I ate, I felt absolutely nauseous. My stomach would like blow up. And so I went to the doctors, and they sent me for these blood tests. And that night, they rang me and said, you need to get up to the hospital now. Your body is showing signs of, I'm still not sure. I think something in my body wasn't right anyway. And I remember crying because my anxiety was through the roof by now, through everything I've been through. That's a whole nother story. I've made a story on my anxiety and all that. But I just was like, I don't want to go. I don't have anywhere for them to put any more needles in me. I can't go back to hospital. But we had to. I knew I had to. So I went in, and the fun of it, you know, the doctors pointing their hands where they shouldn't, and I couldn't lie still, and they were like, you know, we'll just get you a enema and all this. I'm like, this isn't working. I've had these during the week. Nothing is working. I don't care what you guys say. But they gave me one, and they were determined. They're like, go to the toilet, figure it out. When the toilet came out, and I was like, all that's happening is I am in immense pain. My stomach feels like I'm being strangled. Like these, it almost was like contractions. It was ridiculous. So they took me in for a scan because I was just bawling. I was just like, you know, you guys need to listen to me. I wouldn't be here if I didn't have to be. So they took me for a scan. She said to me, "You're right. This isn't just constipation. You are terribly unwell." And so he's going to play with my hair. Mind him, but I need to get this video done. She goes, "You're very unwell. You're right. This isn't normal." What had happened is my bowels had stopped working. They weren't moving because they're meant to kind of like scrunch all the time, and that's what sends everything through. Mine had, it was called a paralytic ileus. My intestines had were paralyzed. They weren't working. And so I got admitted into hospital, and they said, you know, all we can do is leave you to rest. You need to be in here. You need to not eat. No, I wasn't allowed to eat. I was barely allowed to drink. I was hooked up to fluids because they weren't working. What I was eating and drinking was going in, but it was just sitting on top of my stomach. Nothing was going through, and I really needed to stop and give my body time to heal and for everything to get going again. So the reason I got this was because my bowels had been through quite a bit of trauma. Just every time I had the infections, they would bother the bowel. The operations, they have to move your bowels out of the way, and they've just been through a lot, and so they just kind of halt. They can't do it anymore, so to speak. Kind of like how I was feeling. So I was hooked up to IVs and everything. Day 2 of starving and everything, which actually I didn't want to eat because I was feeling terrible. This was painful. This was the most. I went through a lot. I don't even know what was the worst, but it was all as bad as each other. But this was terrible. I think day 2 I started throwing up, and I threw up constantly. And they said to me, I was throwing up. You know those paper hats that they give you to throw up in? I would fill one of those every time. I was just constantly throwing up to the point they had to stop my fluids for a little bit to try and let things get going in my body. There was so much fluid going into my veins because I didn't want to dehydrate. Bentley, that even that was just not staying in my system. Nothing was working, and I was throwing up bile, and I was throwing out what we reckon, and the nurses said, almost bowel content. It was horrendous, and I couldn't stop throwing up. They came in and said, we're going to have to stick a tube up your nose down into your stomach to pump everything out and constantly keep your stomach empty until your bowels get going again. We really need to rest your bowels. I lost it. I absolutely lost it. I started having a panic attack. I was like, you're not doing this. My anxiety was through the roof. I was like, you're not putting a tube in me. I'm not having it. And they're like, look, this needs to happen. I was just throwing up everywhere. I couldn't keep anything. It wasn't good. And so they actually said to me, look, we're going to stick you in a room. I didn't realize how bad it was getting. They're like, look, we're going to stick you in a room right outside the nurse's station, and we're going to get you your own nurse. We're going to get you an ICU nurse, because I think they were worried. What was starting to happen was, I think my stomach was starting to pack up now. So my bowels weren't working, and my stomach was going to stop working. And it was worrying. I remember my mum stressing and my mum having to come down. And I think they were starting to really panic. I think the next place for me to go was ICU. So they stuck me in this room. They said, we need to get this tube down you now. We need to give your body a rest. You're going to end up dead if this carries on. And it is, if you Google it, an ileus is life-threatening. It is. Usually it needs surgery, but they didn't want to put my body under that just yet. And so they said, you know, we need to watch you. You need your own nurse, and you need to get this tube down you. And I was like, no, I can't have the tube. I can't do it. And they're like, you have no idea. They were trying to rationally talk to me about this. They said, you don't have any idea, do you, how bad this is, how bad your situation is now. Your stomach has stopped working. Your intestines are not working. I was like, I'm not having this tube down my throat. But during the night, things got so bad, I could barely move. My body was just in pain. I was throwing up. There was nothing to throw up, but I was throwing up something. I was starting to throw up a little bit of blood, and hang on. And so I remember just saying, okay, do it. I remember having this panic attack, but I was like, I need to do it. The nurse was saying to me, you need to do this. for your own sake. You need to do this. So they came in, I think it was about midnight that I chose to do this. It was horrendous. If you've ever had a tube put down your nose, so they give you a drink of water to drink. I think I would have dealt with it a lot better if I hadn't been through everything in the last month I'd been through. But they gave me a drink of water to drink. You have to lie flat. They were wonderful. They knew how much of a toll this was taking on me. They were talking to me. They were stroking my hair. They put the tube up your nose, and it's about here that you start feeling it. And it feeds down, and once it starts going down your throat, they're like, okay, drink water, just to get you, it's almost to give you something to do. So I was sipping on this water, I was drinking this water, this tube was going down, it went down perfectly fine. And once it was in, I had it in for like a week, and it was the most terriblest thing to live with. And it had like a little latch, it was this little thing in the back where it sits in your throat, and I think it's to stop it moving, but you can feel it. And I didn't sleep for a week. I barely wanted to talk. I can put a picture up if I can. By now I was just so tired. I was anxious all the time. The amount of panic attacks I was having, I couldn't eat. They were using this tube to keep me empty. So it was attached to like a suction thing, but it hurt because when they attached the suction thing, the whole thing would kind of yank a little bit, and it would suck all the fluids and everything out that my body, I hadn't eaten. I had lost a tremendous amount of weight, and it was just keeping my stomach constantly empty. So then my stomach and my bowels weren't under any pressure, and could, just do what they had to do. So it was bringing up all this fluid that my body just generally, your stomach just generally makes acid and all that. And so it was bringing it up. I was totally empty. They were keeping me totally empty. And I was still throwing up though. My stomach would bloat, and I'd be in so much pain that I had to put my finger down my throat and make myself sick to relieve the pressure and the pain. I did this for about a week, but eventually it did come right, and eventually you start kind of farting kind of thing. And then about a week later, I remember texting my mum saying, I went to the toilet. It's starting to work again. And yes, about a week later, everything slowly came back, and they took the tube out, and I could eat some very, very small amounts. And I started going to the toilet again, and we were good. But yeah, and that's just what you have to do when you have an ileus. It's all about giving your stomach a break. So my intestines had failed, had shut down. My stomach was shutting down. I was tremendously sick, but we got through that as well. When I came home, that was my last admission. Everything was good, and all that kind of thing now. Like when the infection had gone, all that was gone, and it was just my body had a tough time recuperating, and so that's why everything in my last admission happened. Once I got home, I really had to retrain myself to eat. I hadn't eaten in weeks. My stomach was empty, and I had to be really careful not to kind of overdo my body. I really had to retrain and take it all slowly. And I'd lost a tremendous amount of weight, but we got going again. So that is kind of what happened. That all happened over about 10 weeks or so, all of that. It was horrendous. It was the worst thing I've ever been through. It caused so much anxiety, so scared of hospitals now. It wasn't a nice thing to go through. I will link down below my video that I made about my anxiety if you want to go see that. I made it quite a while ago. And then I will link a lot of videos below about, if I can find them, about why the reason I ended up needing a hysterectomy and all that. I've kind of talked about that a lot before, but just all the infection, all the scarring and everything led to, I have pretty much 24/7 abdominal pain that was bad at certain times of the month and all that kind of stuff. And to lead a good life, they decided I would need a hysterectomy because everything was so stuck together in there. That's why they thought this one wouldn't happen. That's a whole different story. I have talked about all that before. I can go through that again if you guys like. But that's what these last 3 videos is what led to me needing a hysterectomy. That's where it all started. But and the hysterectomy I will still probably need. We're waiting for a referral to see my gynecologist again, and it's something I probably need because everything is stuck together in there now. I've got so much scarring from all those operations and infection that it's not pretty in there. So I feel like this is all rambled. I've just talked for like the last like hour, and I feel like I missed so much out. That was pretty much what had happened, and I wanted to put this video out there for those, you know, looking on YouTube for other people's stories, like septicemia, the ileus, the operation that never should have happened in the first place, like where it all started. So if you were looking for anything like that, wanted to know symptoms and things like that, that's why I wanted to get these videos all up. And I think I talk about my hospital and everything that happened and where we are today and what happened and all that kind of stuff. I talk about it a lot. So for those people that didn't actually know the full story, there you go, that's the full story. Alright guys, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.